Okay, welcome back everyone. So today I'm covering the Italian Carcano Moschetto Modello or Musketoon Model 1891/1924 rifle. These rifles were Model 1891 long rifles that were cut down and converted to carbines after World War I. Now they did this because one, they were trying to be thrifty and instead of starting up new production of rifles, they could just repurpose old existing stockpiles. And two, the Army decided that having these clumsily long rifles didn't really fit into their post-war military needs, so it was a good stopgap measure. Overall, this is a continuation of a series of presentations I've been doing on the Carcano family of rifles. The Carcanos, for those of you who are unfamiliar with them, were the main small arms used by the Italian military from the mid-1890s up until the end of World War II. I've organized these videos in chronological order of development in a playlist here on the channel, so I will link to that in the video description below. Now the Model 9124 is chambered in the 6.5 Carcano cartridge. That never really changed, and is 36 inches in total length. They ended up cutting the original 1891 barrels down from 30 inches to 17.8 inches, as you can easily tell in the Model 9124. Also, it has a turn-down bolt handle, and the easiest way to spot the difference between the 9124 carbines and other Carcano carbines is this beefy rear sight left over from the conversion process, so it's kind of hard to miss. As a reminder, nothing about the action or operational function changed whatsoever from other Carcanos, and they share pretty much all the same features. It has a tube-style bolt and safety system, and has a Mannlicher-style loading system where you would feed 6 cartridges into the magazine of the rifle in this thin metal end block clip. Okay, well, stepping back for just a minute, we have the adoption of the original Model 1891 long rifle, and then in 1893 and 1900 respectively, 2 different musketoon or carbine variants of the Carcano rifle were adopted to fit additional roles like engineers, cavalrymen, and machine gun crews, and there was a bunch of other roles that necessitated carbines. These variants would all see their way into the First World War. Well, the Great War has come to an end. Italy fought a costly and deadly war with Austria-Hungary, leaving over 600,000 Italians dead. And while Italy and the Allied powers are victorious, very little is gained. On top of an expensive war, a post-war economic crisis is raging through Europe that has left the Italian government completely broke. Public unrest, revolutions, neighborly quarrels, and colonial conflicts are all things that will plague Italy's interwar period. Also, by the end of the Great War in 1918, small arms doctrine was changing. In close quarters trench combat, military saw that increasing individual firepower and maneuverability was key. Some machine guns, for example, just barely missed the conflict, and a few nations were even actively working on gas-operated semi-automatic rifles, which is a technology that will eventually play a larger role in the next World War. Well, many of these new small arms technologies had to be shelved for the time being. Most nations, like Italy, needed to maintain their national armories and keep arms production going, but on a severely reduced military budget, while at the same time trying to modernize their army for the next conflict. The Model 1891 was a rifle created for long-distance engagements and was awkwardly long, bulky, and heavy. A lighter and more pragmatic design was indeed what the Ministry of War was now seeking. They saw the opportunity to create something new and maybe even phase out the 6.5 Carcano cartridge altogether and replace it with something a little more hard-hitting. But again, the resources and money just weren't there for an entirely new gun right after the war. The state had other priorities at the time, so they had to make do with what resources they already had. Well, they had been using Moschetto or carbine-length rifles since 1893, and the Troop Special carbines, which I'm holding right now, seemed adequately suited for what they needed at the moment. A short, lightweight rifle that was easy to use and handle. However, they were reluctant to start production of new carbines for the reasons we just mentioned, but they did have a ton of long rifles that were laying around after the war. So, various technical boards and those within the military apparatus decided to take existing 1891 long rifles and convert them down to carbine lengths. That at least temporarily alleviates concerns about rifle shortages, and it's a smart way to repurpose existing stockpiles. So the Ministry of War issued Circular Directive Number 59 on January 29, 1925 to officially adopt these converted rifles for military use and gave them the nomenclature Moschetto 9124, and they were to replace the Model 91 Troop Special carbines currently in service. Now, the one thing I'll mention is that the only arsenal that did these conversions was the tourney arsenal, which produced or converted an estimated 263,091 24s between 1924 and 1929. You'll see tourney stamped on all 9124 barrels, even though the barrels themselves could be from any arsenal that originally produced the Model 1891s. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at this particular rifle. The markings on the barrel are more or less untouched during the conversion process. This particular rifle started out its life at the Roma Arsenal as a Model 1891 rifle barrel. Now, to the right we see the production year, which is 1918, and then above it we have the year that it was converted at the tourney arsenal, which in this particular rifle's case was in 1928. And then there's this little asterisk right here, which notes that during the conversion process, the barrel was rebored because of excessive corrosion. It would not be uncommon for many to be in poor shape after years of service in the Great War. Now to the far right, at the bottom right here, we see an upside down FP, which indicates what firm the steel came from. On the left side of the barrel, we have the serial number right here, and then an MS inside of a circle. This is an inspector's mark, and then we also, you can faintly see here, is an oval stamp with the crest of Savoy inside of it. This is a symbol of the Kingdom of Italy, so this stamp means it was accepted into government service. Looking at the barrel, as far as we know, there were two main ways they were cut down or shortened during the conversion process. For the earliest version, or running variant Type 1, they first cut the total barrel length down to 17.8 inches. Starting at the muzzle and going to about 6.5 centimeters down the length of the barrel, they reduced or turned down the outside barrel circumference to 0.51 inches. This way, the front sight could be installed and the original bayonet would still fit. Because the barrels on the 1891s have progressive twist rifling, chopping off the front 2/3 of the original barrel definitely affected its accuracy. Now the 6.5mm projectile, with a muzzle velocity of 2,169 feet per second, could not acquire sufficient rotation to stabilize it with the barrel cut this way, and the bullet therefore traveled at rather erratic trajectories. Because of this, they pivoted pretty early on, so variant Type 1s are fairly uncommon. This is where you get a lot of negative connotations about the 9124s being poor rifles, even though the rifles that were cut like this are not very common. The second and most common variant you'll see out there, in fact almost exclusively all of them you will come across out there, will be this running variant Type 2, which is what this particular rifle is. So this is much more complex than the Type 1 variants, but again it allowed the Italians to recycle existing barrels with the best accuracy results possible. So for step 1, they would cut the barrel off right before the rear sight base, leaving a 5.5 inch stub, as you can see here. For barrels that had muzzles in good condition, they would remove the middle section of the barrel, and the two remaining stumps were grafted one into the other. This way the barrel rate was standardized and eliminated the problem of the shortened progressive twist rate in the rifling. Step 3, after they were fused together, the next and final step was to bore out a new combustion or cartridge chamber. So these are the two main variant barrel conversions. For barrels that were heavily corroded, they went through the process of relining and reboring them. These ones, like we said, have the asterisk on the barrel. Looking at the rear sight, this is the easiest way to spot if it's a 9124 compared to other carbines which have lower profile sight bases. So it's adjustable for between 450 meters and 1500 meters. As you can see here, if you depress this button, you can move this up and down. And then the battle sights sit forward at 300 meters. These are pretty much the standard adjustable lengths for every Moschetto or carbine variant of the Carcanos. With these Model 24s, they just modified the 1891 rifle sights to match those sight graduations. Then we have a new handguard here, or an upper handguard here, where this sits nicely forward. So looking at the top here, we have an original 1891 long rifle, and then the bottom here is the 9124. So as you can see, they removed the highest adjustable sight, so it's 1500 meters right here, 2000 meters on the original 1891 long rifle. So shortening the barrel certainly changes the ballistic characteristics of the rifle, as there's no practical reason you'd be firing at such long distances with a carbine length rifle and actually expect to hit your target. And then you can also see the fixed V-notch sight on the slider is positioned a little bit more forward on the 24, which was also done to compensate for new ballistics created by a shorter barrel. Now, it wasn't just the barrel that was recycled during the conversion process, it was also the stocks, the barrel bands, and the nose cap. However, once they ran out of old stocks to use, they did have to make new production ones, with recycled stocks, after they were cut down to length, had to have any gaps in the wood reinforced with metal pieces so the barrel and action would fit properly into the stock channel. Newly made stocks were of course made to fit. Now this particular example of a rifle has a newly made stock, and you can tell this because it doesn't have a metal spacer fitted in between the forend and the barrel here, amongst other changes you would have seen in the stock channel. The sling setup is also interesting because it has what is called a dual sling system. A few months after the rifle's designation was officially adopted, the ministry issued Circular Directive 149 on April 9, 1925, which required that side-mounted sling loops be added to the left side of the rifle. It suggested that a side-mounted sling was more practical and comfortable when slung over the back, so for a while, these only had side-mounted sling loops. Then a new circular, number 215, was issued in April of 1930, which required all troop special carbines to be fitted with dual-position sling bands and a bottom sling swivel to the rear of the stock. As you can see here and here, that's the dual sling system. Now this was done because some units, like the artillery, specifically requested this, so all new mid-barrel bands had to be issued that could accept bottom and side hanging slings. On that point, the mid-barrel band here also keeps the top handguard in place, and then we've got the front nose cap, the front sight, the bayonet lug of course, and then a channel in the bottom for the cleaning rod, which this example is missing its cleaning rod. The other thing you'll notice is that the nose cap is different on these compared to the original variant troop special carbines from World War I. Well, that's because they would have to manufacture all new nose caps, and this saved them from that step. Just reuse the nose cap and the barrel band that was already on it. The buttstock here is pretty normal. We have the serial number and then a faint acceptance cartouche here, and then we have the side-mounted sling that we were talking about being added in 1925. As we said earlier, the Great War is over and it's pretty much bankrupted most of Europe, but there is still a demand for small arms and production has to continue in one way or another. Italy was very smart in their approach with reusing old stockpiles of barrels, stocks, and actions. By the late 1920s, more border disputes between independent Ethiopia and Italian Somalia had increased the need for more arms as Italy was gearing up for a new conflict. While the 91-24s were a temporary stopgap, they basically needed more guns, and so they started making the brand new troop special carbines starting in 1928. This was called the Moschetto per Truppe Speciale Modello 1891 Modificato, or Musketoon for Special Troops Model 1891 Modified. You'll more often than not see this incorrectly referred to as the Model 9128, and this is what we'll take a look at in my next video. Again, I've organized this series of videos in chronological order, so if you're interested in watching from the beginning, I'll direct you to the playlist in the video description. Now, the information I used for this video comes from the book The Model 1891 Carcano Rifle, a detailed development and production history. I'll leave a link to this book in the video description as a reference. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.